Assalamualaikum, and I bid to Dr. Hafsan and my fellow friends and to whoever watching this video. My name is Julia from Dietetics. Today I would like to present on intermittent fasting and human metabolic health. So before we start, let's watch one video regarding intermittent fasting and how it works.
Intermittent fasting refers to eating plans that alternate between fasting and eating periods. The goal is to systematically starve the body long enough to trigger fat burning. While research is still underway and the method may not be suitable for everyone, there is evidence that, when done correctly, intermittent fasting can help lose weight, lower blood pressure and cholesterol, prevent or control diabetes, and improve brain's health. During a meal, carbohydrates in food are broken down into glucose. Glucose absorbs through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream and is transported to various organs, where it serves as the major energy source. Excess glucose is stored for later use in the liver and adipose tissue in the form of glycogen and fats. In between meals, when the body is in the fasted state, the liver converts glycogen back to glucose to keep supplying the body with energy. Typically, an inactive person takes about 10 to 12 hours to use up the glycogen stores, although someone who exercises may do so in much less time. Once the reserve of glycogen in the liver is depleted, the body taps into energy stores in adipose tissues. This is when fats are broken down into free fatty acids, which are then converted into additional metabolic fuel in the liver. Thus, if the fasted state lasts long enough, the body burns fat for energy and loses that extra fat. Losing the extra fat is translated into a range of associated health benefits. Insulin is the hormone required for driving glucose into cells. Insulin level is regulated to match the amount of glucose in the blood, that is, high after a meal and low between meals. Because insulin is secreted after each meal, eating throughout the day keeps insulin levels high most of the time. Constant high insulin levels may desensitize body tissues, causing insulin insensitivity, the hallmark of prediabetes and diabetes type 2. Fasting helps keep insulin levels low, reducing diabetes risks.
There are a few types of intermittent fasting, such as alternate day fasting, modified fasting regimens, time-restricted feeding, Ramadan fasting, and other religious fasting. Okay, so first we look at alternate day fasting, which defines as fasting days in which no energy containing foods or beverages are consumed, alternating with days where food and beverages are consumed. So, based on 3 studies, sample size range from 8 to 30 normal weight adults, and no information was provided about physical activity levels of these participants. So, as a result, it is reported that significant weight loss, a mean of 2.5% weight loss in 22 days, an improvement in HDL and TG but increase in LDL cholesterol, and then improvement in inflammatory markers and a significant decrease in at least one glucoregulatory marker. Modified fasting regimens, which mean it allows for the consumption of 20 to 25% of energy needs on regularly scheduled fasting days and period of severely limited energy intake rather than no energy intake. This regimen is the basis for the popular 5-2 diets, which involve energy restriction for 2 non-consecutive days a week and usual eating for the other 5 days. We identified 8 trials of modified fasting in human beings. So, study sample size ranged from 10 to 107 adults, all of whom were overweight and obese, and duration ranged from 8 to 6 months, and of the 8 studies, only 1 institute weekly exercise goal. So, based on the findings, it is reported that significant weight loss, decrease in fasting insulin but none found reduction in fasting glucose, improvement in lipids, improvement in CRP, TNF alpha, adiponectin, leptin, and brain-derived neurotrophic factor (BDNF). Half of this study assessed some aspect of mood or other behavioral side effect in response to the fasting regimens. So, In general, this study reported a smaller number of participants reported negative side effects such as feeling cold, irritable, low energy, and hungry. However, there were mean improvement in mood, including reduction in tension, anger, fatigue, and increase in self-confidence and positive mood. Another finding reported that modified fasting regimen combined with an exercise protocol produced significant superior weight loss compared to fasting alone and exercise alone. Time restricted feeding. This protocol allows individuals to consume energy intake within a specific window, which induce fasting period on a routine basis. Studies of less than 3 meals per day are indirect examinations of a prolonged daily or nightly fasting periods. We were only able to identify 2 trials in human beings that investigated the effect of time-restricted feeding. The first one is involving 29 normal week men within 2 weeks per study conditions, which prescribed nighttime fasting interval of more than 11 hours. As a result, a significant weight change difference between the intervention and control conditions, which translate into 1.3% weight loss. Another crossover study compared the effect of consuming one afternoon meal per day for 8 weeks. It is reported that 4.1% weight loss in comparison to an isocaloric diet consumed as 3 meals per day, reduction in fasting glucose, and improvement in LDL and HDL cholesterol. Self-reported hunger was higher in the morning for those consuming 1 meal per day, and no mean changes in tension, depression, anger, vigor, fatigue, and confusion. Ramadan fasting. It is defined as a fast from dawn to sunset during the holy month of Ramadan, and the most common dietary practice is to consume one large meal after sunset and one lighter meal before dawn, and therefore the feast and fast period of Ramadan are approximately 12 hours in length. So, based on meta-analysis of 35 studies, age range from 18 to 58 years old, noted 52% studies were conducted in males and females, and 34% were in males only, and 11% were in female only. As a result, 1.24 kg weight reduction over the month of Ramadan fasting, and across 16 follow-up studies, mean weight regain was 0.72 kg in the 2 weeks following Ramadan. Another meta-analysis of 30 cohort studies, including healthy men and women, reported LDL and fasting blood glucose level were decreased in both sex group and also in the entire group compared to the level prior to Ramadan. In female, only HDL cholesterol level was significantly increased. In males, there were a significant decrease in weight, total cholesterol and TG, and significant lower concentration of inflammatory markers such as CRP, IL-6, and TNF-alpha. The last one is other religious fasts. So Latter-day Saint followers routinely abstain from food and drink for extended period of time. Some Seventh-day Adventists consume their last of 2 daily meals in an afternoon, and resulting in an extended nighttime fasting interval that may be biologically important. So, based on a study of 448 patients from hospital in Utah, reported that significantly lower weight and lower fasting glucose and lower prevalence of diabetes and coronary stenosis. We move on to mechanistic factors linking intermittent fasting with health. Intermittent fasting regimens are hypothesized to influence metabolic regulation via effect on circadian biology, the gastrointestinal microbiota, and modifiable lifestyle behaviors. Organisms evolve to restrict their activity to the night or day by developing an endogenous circadian clock to ensure that physiologic processes are performed at the optimal times. Time of day plays a major role in the integration of metabolisms and energetics, as well as physiologic indices such as hormone secretion pattern, physical coordination, and sleep. In mammals, the master biologic clock is located in the suprachiasmatic nuclei of the hypothalamus and is entrained to light and dark stimuli. Similar clock oscillator have been found in peripheral tissue such as liver, with feeding as the dominant timing cue. Desynchronization between SCN master clock and peripheral cardiac clock disrupt the energy balance and lead to increased risk of chronic disease. Moreover, shift work disrupts the circadian rhythm and is associated with increased risk of obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer, particularly breast cancer. And similarly, data from trials and prospective cohorts support the hypothesis that consuming the majority of the day's energy earlier in the day is associated with the lower weight and improved health. Gastrointestinal microbiota. Many functions of the gastrointestinal tract exhibit robust circadian or sleep-wake rhythm. For example, gastric emptying and blood flow are greater during the daytime than at night, and metabolic responses to a glucose load are slower in the evening than in the morning. Therefore, it is plausible that a chronically disturbed circadian profile may affect the gastrointestinal function and impair metabolism and health. Studies suggest that the changes in the composition and metabolic function of the gut microbiota in the obese individual may enable an obese microbiota to harvest more energy from the diet than a lean microbiota, and thereby influence the net energy absorption, expenditure, and storage. So, in addition, obesity-related changes in gut microbiota can alter gut permeability and bacterial translocation to promote systematic inflammation. This is a hallmark of obesity and obesity-related disease. The last one is modified lifestyle behavior, which include energy intake, energy expenditure, and sleep. So for the energy intake, is most fasting regimen reduce the total number of hours available for eating and thereby may reduce overall energy intake and the risk of obesity. So shift and night workers has demonstrated alteration in appetite regulating hormones that may lead to increased risk of energy intake. So for the energy expenditure, animal studies indicate that the circadian clock regulates locomotions. So mice on a time-restricted isocaloric feeding regimen have shown improved muscle coordination and increased activity and energy period toward the end of feeding periods. And for the sleep, nighttime eating is associated with reduced sleep duration and poor sleep quality, and which lead insulin resistance and increased risk of obesity, diabetes, CVD, and cancer. In conclusion, in healthy, normal weight, overweight, and obese adults, there is a little evidence that intermittent fasting regimens are harmful physically and mentally in terms of mood. So it appears that almost any intermittent fasting regimens can result in some weight loss. So based on 3 studies, alternate day fasting appeared to result in weight loss as well as a reduction in glucose and insulin concentration. However, this pattern may not be practical because of intense hunger on fasting days, and modified alternate day fasting regimen result in reduced weight. However, there was limited and mixed evidence for reductions in insulin concentration, improvement in lipid, and reduction in inflammatory factors. Research to date has not demonstrated that alternate day fasting regimen produce superior weight loss in comparison to standard continuous calorie restriction weight loss plan. Data are lacking regarding the impact of intermittent fasting on other health behaviors such as diet, sleep, and physical activity. So I think that's all from me. Thank you for watching.